pleased to have Sebastien Gibergues from Amadeus. So Sebastien, welcome.
Thanks, Pete. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So first off, revenue up 77% in Q3 year over year. The word profit appeared for the first time in the Amadeus earnings report since I think probably Q1 2020. So things are starting to look up a little bit.
Yeah, but what a crazy 2 years it has been since we were actually here together, for most of us, I guess, enjoying mojitos and talking about travel innovation 2 years ago with no idea about what was going to hit us. So yeah, it's been a tough 2 years for Amadeus as well, of course. We're in the middle of the storm. We had to make difficult decisions, but we also spent a lot of time with our partners trying to help them through that crisis. So yes, that first quarterly profit is a big milestone for us, but it's also, I think, a good signal for the industry moving towards recovery. Right? We do see that recovery happening. The US-Europe borders reopening is a major milestone as well. Of course, we still see Europe actually going back a bit with the latest measures. Asia is still a long way from recovery, but let's say we are definitely very cautiously optimistic.
And you actually experienced different stages of recovery at different points because you were based in Singapore at the beginning of the pandemic and you moved back to France mid-pandemic. So what were the different dynamics like in Asia versus in Europe?
It's been, I think every country had a different approach to the pandemic, even across Asia, right? So country was really very protective, very closed. It worked for some country, but now it's also taking it back to a difficult recovery pattern. But I tell you, I moved from Singapore to downtown Nice in the south of France in the middle of summer. It was just polar opposite. It was a real shock. I still have a mask with me, by the way. Being a good Singaporean citizen.
Yes. So I wanted to start by putting a wrap on some of the technology and innovation that we saw here today. So we saw. We covered accessible travel, we covered business travel tech, live video shopping, so commerce shopping, and then a few different applications of hospitality tech, so contactless check-in, revenue management, and then lastly, we saw a fintech project. So first off, what surprised you that you did not expect to see on the stage? And then secondly, what did you expect to see on the stage that maybe you didn't see?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there are usually industry favorites around fintech payment. That's a classic. We're expecting this to be there. Corporate travel digitalization, always a fundamental industry theme. I was quite impressed and happy to see live shopping. Actually, that's definitely good to see this on stage. I mean, coming back from Asia, we've seen really the huge potential in China in particular, but now it's coming around the whole of Asia of live shopping. So that was definitely for me a welcome addition to the mix. Now I was given obviously the industry situation. I was expecting a bit more on health measures and health technology maybe. It's probably a very hard topic to tackle. In Amadeus, we've built our themes on innovation around a few themes around go safe, go informed, go local, and go sustainable. But we see how difficult right now it is to try to bring people together to innovate around safe travel measures, around bringing all of the pieces of the trip together into an experience. But at the same time, if we crack this one and crack document and health passports, maybe we have a shot at cracking some visa, for instance, topic we haven't cracked in a while. So that should be pretty high on the list. And of course, I mean, sustainability has to be priority for us in the next few years.
Yeah, and we did see some sustainability startups, and we included some on the Hot 25 at Phocuswright, and we'll see Thrust Carbon, who will present tomorrow to kind of explain their strategy behind kind of trying to increase sustainability across the industry.
Looking forward to that.
So you mentioned health and safety, and I agree with you that that there are a lot of companies that are trying to help support that category. But there is a challenge of interoperability between the different players, and each, even as we talked about different markets having a different strategy with COVID, there's a lot of challenge with communication between platforms. So do you see that, and maybe that's a reason why it's so challenging in that space to kind of gain a lot of traction?
Yeah, we see that, and again, there are a few projects we had in our boxes around what we call Traveler ID, which is how to bring, elements of a trip together to really help everyone interact with, without, being careful of data protection laws. But there's a lot of value that could be extracted from sharing a bit more about information of a trip between the different touch points of a traveler. That's always been in our innovation projects, but now it's kind of been forced out to the market because we're using this kind of concept and tech to bring this kind of health data across the different actors. And as I say, if we crack this, then we have a shot at cracking a few more use cases for the industry.
Yeah. So one of the biggest trends that we followed during the pandemic was the acceleration and shift to digital channels. And the Phocuswright team reported a 5% jump in online penetration, so bookings that are made through websites and mobile. You're responsible for digital search and Inspire at Amadeus. So first, explain your role and what exactly you do, and then maybe share some of your perspectives on some of the demand shifts that you're seeing across the market and how you're thinking about resetting models to address some of those demand shifts.
Sure. It's true that we've seen every kind of major event, political or crisis, tends to accelerate digitalization. We've seen it in India, actually, when I was in Asia still, with demonetization, which created a huge boost in the adoption of online payment technology, which created a huge upside for all of the digital players, including the online travel agencies in the market. I was mentioning as well this Traveler ID concepts, which are brought to the forefront with now the needs of this new post-COVID, I'm always careful with those words, travel. But so my role at Amadeus is to work to manage the Search and Inspire portfolio, which is the technology we provide to online travel agencies, meta search partners, to repower content and features for their consumers on their website. And there's a few things we definitely can see, powering those big brands out there, is that obviously travel demand is there. I'm sure tomorrow we'll have a lot of comments around the state of travel demand, but if booking patterns tend to follow their course, it's amazing to see the direct correlation between any kind of destination or border reopening announcement and search transactions. There's almost a direct correlation. As soon as a destination is announced as open for business, we see those huge search patterns rise, and this is pretty amazing to watch. But at the same time, those patterns do change, right? Seasonality get impacted. The advanced purchase is really all over the place. And also we see that the decision process for the destination comes much later because of some uncertainty in the obviously in the political and geopolitical situation, which actually on the tech side has direct implications because we use a lot of AI technology inside our search tech to kind of predict some of those and optimize some of the performance. And we're spending a lot of time these days having to retrain those models, so they can learn again what's actually happening in the market and re-optimize and don't drift away from the reality of the market. So it's actually quite fascinating to see on the tech side.
So given this kind of fundamental shift on the demand side, what do travel retailers need to do to address the needs of the traveler today? And also, you mentioned post-COVID, and I think we're still cautiously talking about recovery right now.
Yeah.
So as we hit through these different phases of recovery, what do retailers need to think about as they're, trying to grab some of this pent-up demand that we see when markets open up? The U.S. border just opened to European travelers as well as other markets around the world, and we saw a huge spike in airfare search, for example. And I'm sure you saw this as well on your side.
Indeed. No, there's a lot on the plate of the travel retailers out there. And first, to be fair, they did an amazing job during crisis managing traveler, through the cancellation and refund processes, right? So a lot of them have invested heavily in technology to enable, self-servicing of many of those use cases. So again, that's good news because that's going to help and improve the traveler experience in the post-recovery. I'd say the main challenge will be to deal with the complexity of the new travel products. I mean, clearly now we see that consumers choose almost destination before transport, And that's going to change probably a lot of the dynamics and the user experience out there. Maybe more inspiration use cases will come back and become more prevalent. And then there are a number of use cases that used to be quite niche, typically combining different airlines with virtual interline type of recommendations, which used to be quite niche, kind of seen as a way to hack the system. But now with the airline networks having shrunk, and it's going to take time for them to rebuild to the scale they had pre-COVID, actually virtual interline becomes a necessity, right? And a major feature for consumers who will need those kind of exotic connections to be able to go simply from point A to point B, and at least have some options to compare with.
Yes, so being 30% international this year, I talked to some attendees last night who had quite the journey getting from the middle of Europe to southern Florida, connections through France, through Dulles, through a bunch of different markets, and to your point, virtual interlining is something that almost is essential.
Yeah, and I'll add to this the big push for rail, which goes a bit to the sustainable travel projects that we run at Amadeus. We're working with many of the entities in Europe to really make rail a lot more broadly accessible. Because it was rail year in Europe this year, so really all of the countries are pushing those rail connections. In France, it's actually not going to be possible to fly to any cities that's less than 2 hours away. So all of this will also push this new content, and it has to be made available. So when you fly from Chicago to some town in France, you will have to connect with the local railway, and that's a lot of tech. That's a lot of again VI technology to bring those pieces of the puzzle together.
All right, so let's shift to content. So this vision of hyper-personalization and individual offers still seems to be a bit out of reach. Content's fragmented across all segments. What sort of challenges does this create, and how does it impact your ability to innovate and help manage the travel funnel?
Yeah, to be fair, that's probably, in my current role, it's probably my biggest concern. As we said, usually crises and big movements tend to bring innovation forward. We talked about demonetization, online payment, we talked about rail, and all of this is going in the right direction, right? But with some of the latest move of the industry, we're actually going back to fragmentation of content, which is really setting us back a bit in terms of how much we can innovate for the traveler. So clearly we, it's pretty out there, but we work really hard with airlines to create new types of content through new retailing capabilities. We have to be very careful at the same time we don't lose some of the access to content we used to have to be able to innovate for the consumer. And right now we see that we're actually, in some use cases, we're actually set back actually a few years, and we have to really watch that. It's going to be, for me personally, my role with building that search portfolio for the channels. It's going to be a big challenge next year to really find this balance between personalization. Yes, definitely, it's important, but we have to add the dimension of the travel funnel, right? We cannot just personalize every search transaction. It just doesn't make sense even from a business perspective. But just a fun fact, we did some research, and if we start to really atomize like the offer creation, the way it's going with the new standards, we might multiply between organic and this new model. We might multiply the shopping traffic by 100 to 150 times, not percent, times over the next few years. And I'm talking about versus pre-pandemic levels, right? And this is going to cost a lot of money, and actually it's going to cost a lot of CPU cycles, which is not good for the sustainability of our industry. So I think there's a lot to do here to make sure we balance personalization and the need for retailing with the travel funnel, and not every transaction should be treated the same.
Yeah. So we've got about a minute or so left. So I want to do a couple of quick rapid fires for you. So just the first thing that comes to your mind, we'll try to keep these quick. So personalization.
So yes, but at the right time.
NDC.
Great move for the airlines and great step forward, but now we need to make it a reality for the consumer with new products and for the channels with proper scalability and adoption.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, business as usual.
The metaverse.
Okay, that's an interesting one, because for me it's kind of this mix between gaming and social media, but maybe the live shopping that we saw today could be a path for the future of travel.
Yeah. Lastly, the future of global distribution systems.
Okay, I can't talk for everyone here, but you can definitely count on Amadeus to be around to help rebuild travel for many years to come.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sebastien
welcome.
Gibergues. Thank you. Well done.